Are we doing video on this one?
I think so. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, it's fine.
All right. Otherwise, the hat is just for you.
Yeah, otherwise the hat. I don't know. I don't know if you were gonna play like any ads. I mean, I don't know. I think that one ad does need to be included with the podcast.
Yeah, I don't have like this episode planned out, but like I figure we can kind of wing it and throw in videos when necessary. Well, okay. First thing I wanted to ask you though, Evan, is do you remember how to read?
A little bit.
Yeah, I had a hard time because we didn't do any book club episodes in 2024. So I like
true.
If it's not for the podcast, I don't read. You know.
Yeah. Yes. Well, kind of same here. I'm trying to do a little bit more reading, but the good thing is that we're reading Perry Johnson's book, and he tends to write in very short, choppy sentences. Doesn't really require a lot of high level vocabulary or anything. And,
well, sometimes he writes the same sentence more than once too, so that kind of cuts down on how long it takes to read.
Yeah.
I just saw this 2 pages ago, so I.
Yeah, and also all of the ideas are 70, 80 years old, so.
Yeah, nothing really unfamiliar here. All right, well, to properly introduce this, welcome everyone to the latest and greatest in our different book club series. We are finally going to read this weird book, 2 Cents to Save America by Perry Johnson, forward by Dr. Arthur Laffer. And yes, that is the Dr. Arthur Laffer of the Laffer Curve, a Ronald Reagan economic advisor. I need to be careful not to show people my home address while we're doing this. And so if you don't remember, we talked about Perry like a lot, but very briefly in mid to late 2003, because he was running a ridiculous vanity campaign for the Republican nomination for president for 2024. And I did not know who he was until we saw him at the state fair in 2023. Did you know him because of the Super Bowl ad?
I do remember that Super Bowl ad, which is, I think, maybe one of the best political ads I've ever seen. And the one that I'm referring to is the one where it has fat Chuck Schumer, fat Bernie Sanders, fat AOC, some very bad voiceover work, very bad CGI work. And Perry's talking about, and of course it features, Perry's rictus grin, where he's addressing the citizens of Iowa and New Hampshire who are watching the Super Bowl, talking about the need to put the federal government on a 2-cent diet.
Yeah, I mean, since we're already talking about it, we might as well watch it. Yeah, no,
this is the best way to start this out.
Yeah,
because I was what the fuck is this? I was just so shocked. This is very different from the rest of the Super Bowl stuff. And also it's way early. It was January 2023.
Right. Yeah,
so I think he was the first person to air any ads at all.
Yeah. He dumped a bunch of money into a Super Bowl ad in Iowa markets. So we were some of the first to hear, outside of Michigan, some of the first people to hear about Perry Johnson, the quality guru. So if you are on the $5 tier on our Patreon, you can watch this ad along with us right now.
Senator Schumer, what are you doing about the bloating cost of government?
Got any pie?
Our fat, bloated government is choking us with inflation. Milk, eggs, heat, unaffordable.
Just pay the government more.
That's not the solution. That's the problem.
We know bestest. Bester. More besterest.
I'm Perry Johnson. I've written a book called 2 Cents to Save America. If Washington cuts the budget just 2% a year, problem solved.
Perry Johnson brought quality controls to Detroit that saved the American automobile industry. Next, he'll save America.
Yes, I want the whole pie.
Get 2 books. Send one to Schumer. I'm serious. This isn't rocket science. We can afford to live again.
Order Perry Johnson's 2 cents to save America today.
2 cents to save America.
I approve this message.
So he's from Michigan, and he had like a Jersey guy doing the voiceover, I guess.
Yeah. I also like that it's just advertising the book that we are about to talk about.
Yeah, I guess he didn't even say he's running for president.
Yeah, he's just like, it's just a prelude to the campaign, I guess.
Yeah. I like how everyone was both fat and stupid in that ad.
Yeah, no, it's great. I also didn't notice that there's some other, Democratic politicians in the background. Like there is a fat Ilhan Omar, which I didn't notice before.
Mm-hmm. I think they all
look
get
nothing like.
They get labels except for Liz Warren.
Yeah,
which she's in there, but I never saw her name.
Yeah,
yeah, and Biden. What did he say? We know bestest.
He doesn't know how to talk. I mean, which is true.
But not. It's not like that.
Not
really.
like that. Yeah. It's a different kind of not being able to talk.
So he mentions that he saved the automobile industry in Detroit, which thank you, Perry, so much for
hell yeah, dude.
keeping manufacturing alive in Detroit. You are.
It wasn't that big stimulus package. It was all Perry.
So I don't fully understand like what this means, but he like set standards for quality control in. Was it all the way back in the 70s that he like set up these the ISO 9000 or whatever?
It's a complete nothing. What it is basically just like internal auditing practices that basically it lays a lot in like software engineering and stuff. And it's basically like you have a system that's designed to do a specific thing and whatever. And basically it's just auditing to make sure that whatever your system that you're making does what it says it's supposed to do. It doesn't say that the system is good. It doesn't say that it has any productive purpose. It just says, what you're doing is what you say you're doing.
Expected outcomes are being achieved. Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah. So he like prior to his political attempts at a political career, that's basically how he made his money and how he became a known figure. Is he calls himself the quality guru. He was like the king of quality assurance, I guess. And in addition to these books that he put out, he started his own company. He has multiple companies, but just like a brief overview on his Wikipedia is what I was looking at here. But Perry Johnson Registrars Incorporated is something he started to like help companies ensure that they are complying with his own standards. So he's sort of like, he sells you the book and then he sells you these like consulting whatever fees to make sure you're actually reading and following the instructions in the book. So he's got you on both ends, I guess.
Well, I mean, to be fair, he didn't create the ISO 9000 stuff either. That's like the ISO organization that creates the standards. He just wrote a book about implementing those standards and then made these companies... The companies are basically give certifications to say, yes, you are complying with the ISO standards. With the ISO.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. So his book is not the code itself. It is like how to understand this.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
Not as smart as he has led you to believe.
And as you might expect from like a right-wing rich businessman, he's got a lot of like scams that come up on his Wikipedia page. Like, for example, Boeing has alleged a conflict of interest with Perry Johnson Registrars. There's not a lot of details there, but Perry Johnson Registrars was suspended by the U.S. Registrar Accreditation Board because of these allegations from Boeing. And this is what I really liked. This is sort of like a direct mail scam thing that like a lot of like religious organizations were doing in the 80s and like Republican campaigns. On October 9th, 2000, a lawsuit against Johnson's consulting firm, Perry Johnson Incorporated. All of his various businesses, by the way, are just his name with some word after them.
Yeah. That's a real entrepreneur.
Yeah. Get your name out there and then your reputation will build. So Perry Johnson Incorporated, the consulting firm, was sued for sending junk faxes en masse. This was a result of the FCC citing Perry Johnson Incorporated for violating the TCPA by mass faxing, and they paid up to $424.75 in compensation to any company or person who had received a junk fax.
Yeah.
And
he was just sending completely black pages and just printing them over and over again to try to sabotage his competitors.
Yeah, he's just doing pranks all over the country. His firm was also required to place an ad in USA Today detailing the compensation rules and create a website inviting recipients of unsolicited faxes to receive compensation. A previous
the idea
lawsuit
of a junk fax is so funny.
Yeah, I mean, I assume it's just because like these fax numbers are listed publicly. Mm-hmm. So just it's like a mailing list. A mailing list that these like scummy like doomsday prepper companies like find the list of vulnerable contact information.
Yeah, and it's also very cheap because you don't have to pay for the paper, you don't have to pay for the toner. All you have to have is a fax machine and a landline.
A previous lawsuit had been filed alleging that Johnson's firm had sent 11.7 million unsolicited faxes for 9 years. But that lawsuit was dismissed because the plaintiffs had sued Perry Johnson, the individual, instead of Perry Johnson Incorporated. So another benefit of naming all of your companies after yourself is that you can somehow get stuff thrown out of court because no, you sued Perry Johnson, not Perry Johnson Incorporated. So this doesn't count. And then, even when he attempted to begin a political career, he was involved in some sort of fishy behavior. So he didn't just immediately jump to running for president. He attempted to run for governor of Michigan in the 2022 election because everyone was mad at Gretchen Whitmer. So like a dozen Republicans ran in the primary, and a good chunk of them, Perry Johnson included, were involved in some sort of signature fraud, attempting to get on the ballots. Oh, also, he launched that gubernatorial campaign with a Super Bowl ad as well.
Man.
I'll save that one for later, maybe. So the requirement was 15,000 valid signatures to appear on the primary ballot, and it was found that he had 9,400 signatures that were invalid and fraudulent. Actually, let me pull up this article. There's a Detroit Free Press article from May of 2022 where it goes a little bit into detail on like what was going on here. Yes, businessman and quality guru, they put that in quotes, Perry Johnson did not file enough valid signatures. So he submitted 23,193 signatures, and only 13,800 of those were valid. So, like over a third, like almost half of the signatures were like fucked up. Regardless of what the board decides, criminal investigations and possible charges against certain signature collectors are possible. Craig is former Detroit Police Chief James Craig, who also had a lot of fraudulent signatures. Craig Johnson and other affected candidates have said they are victims of fraud, not perpetrators. So what's
Staffer's fault? I guess I don't know.
Somebody tricked me into collecting 10,000 false signatures.
Yeah, I didn't personally collect those signatures, so it's not. I mean, obviously, I was a victim here too.
The Bureau does not currently have reason to believe that any specific candidates or campaigns were aware of the activities of fraudulent petition circulators. But, what would the motivation be then? Somebody just took it upon themselves to put a bunch of dead people's names on your petition, and you had nothing to do with it.
They really worked those campaign people really hard. It was they were put in a bad position. They were given unrealistic expectations, and though they had to just forge those signatures.
They got quotes here from John Yob, who was a spokesman for Perry Johnson's gubernatorial campaign. And John Yob said that the Bureau of Elections does not have the right to unilaterally void every single signature obtained by the alleged forgers who victimized 5 campaigns. So, again, like 5 of the Republican primary campaigns were victims of this like scam to collect fraudulent signatures. But who did this? Yeah, here, the end of the article is my favorite part. The complaint against Johnson, filed by Liddell, who is a former legal counsel to Democratic Governor Jennifer Granholm. So a Democrat is the one who is like inspecting these and filing complaints. The complaint alleges that Johnson's campaign filed petitions with, quote, extensive irregularities, including signatures from dead people, apparent forgeries, extensive signature errors, a high number of duplicate signatures, numerous address and jurisdictional issues, and the use of many of the same petition circulators in apparent illicit petition activities. So I feel like if you're going to do that, you have to get way more signatures. Like it has to, it can't be like half of your signatures are very obviously fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if you're going to do this scam, you have to get a lot of signatures so that even if they find the fraud, you still have enough to get on the ballots. That's the game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. It's funny. We've had multiple issues with, campaigns forging signatures to get on ballots.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a topic that comes up frequently on this podcast.
Yeah. I mean, it's been close to home recently. Oliver had to get signatures to get on the ballot for the city council thing, and his opponent, I've heard, has requested to see all of his filing documents.
Yeah.
So he'll be searching out potential fraud on our behalf. Oh yeah, they did press charges against some people, Sean Wilmoth, Jamie Wilmoth, and Willie Reed, for their role in the fraudulent signature scheme. And Perry Johnson applauded the charges. So I might do more research into that to see like what the fuck was going on. But I think we should probably talk about the book, right?
Yeah.
So as part of his attempt to run for president, there was that Super Bowl ad where he advertised this book. And I believe he mailed this book, a copy of this book, to as many registered Republicans in Iowa as he could.
Mm-hmm.
This just like flooded our state in early mid 2023. And despite the prevalence of physical copies in Iowa, both Evan and I have physical copies that were found at Goodwill. And thank you to our friend Micah for finding the second copy of this for us. I could not find a single digital copy of this on any of the illicit corners of the internet. So there's like probably 1 million copies of this circulating and zero interest.
Except for us. We're the only ones who care.
Yeah, and it took us over a year to actually get to it.
I was skeptical on it, but I've definitely got some entertainment out of it.
Yeah.
And we'll get into it.
Yeah. All right. So again, if you're watching the video, you can see the excellent cover design. Perry himself. It's got a nice glossy hardcover as well. You can see the reflection of my computer monitor fucking up the image here. But Perry looking professional in front of a American flag. His hand is on the back of a chair or some sort of railing. I don't know.
Yeah, hard to say.
And 2 giant pennies floating in front of him to signify the 2 cents to save America. The plan of which, I guess, is just to cut all budgets by 2%.
Yeah, 2% every year. And this is the kicker, give financial bonus incentives to the heads of those departments, because that's the only it's very harebrained. It's pretty funny.
You got to bribe people to cut the budget. That's the only way it's going to work.
It's very important.
The only motivator is personal financial gain, right? I mean, he knows this. He's a businessman.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's all about, he's all talking about incentives. You got to incentivize hard work. You got to incentivize positive economic outcomes.
That comes up a lot in the book, yeah. And then the back cover is even better because Perry is... I mean, are we to believe he's leaning on the Liberty Bell? Is that what's being set up there?
Yeah, the security people are not going to like that. They're gonna tell you to please step away, sir.
Yeah, it's disrespectful. That thing's already been cracked once, man.
Yeah, man.
Once you open the book, you see that this was published by Perry Johnson Publishing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, PJ Publishing. The binding on my book is already falling apart.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I used to work in a book bindery, so
well
I know good binding. This is not good binding.
There is a helpful list of other titles by the author. Oh yeah, 1973 is when he first put out one of those ISO 9000 books. So he's been at this a long time. And every other book listed as other titles by the author is about quality control.
Yeah.
From 1973 all the way through the year 2000. It's like 6 books about quality control. All right. Once you get to the list of the table of contents, you may notice that there's also a list of figures and a list of cartoons.
Yeah.
The cartoons are baffling.
Yeah, this is really important for anyone who wants to read this book, like ironically or for fun, because the list of cartoons, you can just skip to those. That's going to be probably your best bang for your buck.
Yeah, I mean, they actually do kind of summarize what he's talking about as well.
Yeah, you would say that they might not have any other content other than summarizing what he's saying.
Yeah, before I cracked this open, I assumed that he was like taking political cartoons that already existed, but no, these are originals. They like actually quote stuff that he was just talking about in the book where they're inserted.
With zero humor other than just this is a absurd situation, isn't it? The government sure is wasteful and inefficient.
I think there was one that I actually did laugh at. I'll let you know when we get to it.
Yeah, well, there's some that are a little bit more involved, I guess.
Yeah, and not like just an ironic chuckle. Like I actually thought it was genuinely a little bit funny. But one thing, so you also may notice this is a bit sloppy. Like I don't know if he had an editor. I would guess not.
No, yeah, I noticed several typos and like just duplicate sentences and
we were off to a good start with the table of contents where chapter 10 is called Simplifying the US Tax Code. Not capitalized US, but the US Tax Code. I'm very detail oriented.
I did not pick up on that one.
All right, as I mentioned, the foreword is by Dr. Arthur Laffer. Dr. Arthur Laffer, who is basically responsible for Reaganomics, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was, I think pretty high-ranking advisor to Reagan. And yeah, the Laffer curve is what he's most famous for, which is basically the idea that, like, at a certain point, the government taxes too much, then revenue drops. But if you lower taxes, you can actually increase revenue. Whatever. It's some neoconservative or neoliberal bullshit.
The idea that there's like an ideal tax rate that will maximize productivity or whatever. That's what the Laffer curve is looking for.
And let's just say our credentials, we're not macroeconomists, economists or whatever. I took an economics class in our high school from a man named Francis McMahon, who is no longer with us.
I forgot he died. Yeah, I mean he was pretty old when we were in school. Yeah,
but he was a University of Chicago graduate, and I'm sure that he went out to dinner with Mr. Laffer on multiple occasions. And was super right wing. Obviously, University of Chicago. If you know anything about like economics, it's like all the Austrian school people. Went there as big influential school.
It's where like post Keynesian economics came from, basically, right?
Yeah.
I don't really know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Anyway, what I was going to say is I passed the class and I got a 3 on the AP exam for macroeconomics. So we're very qualified to talk about all this stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, and also we convinced Mr. McMahon to go see Borat with his wife. And
I think it was Dr. McMahon, right? He had a doctor.
Yeah, true. Yeah, he was overqualified to be teaching high school. Yeah.
So it makes you wonder. So yeah, the laugher forward. I mean, basically, this is just here to give Perry some prestige.
Yeah.
Like, the guy who advised Reagan, he thinks that my ideas are good. Mm-hmm. So this will appeal to the 60 to 70-year-old Republican voters.
Yeah. The crux of it here is Mr. Johnson understands that it is an imperative to reduce the size of the government and has offered an effective policy to do so, which is, by the way, a personal favorite of mine. Reduce the size of discretionary government spending by 2% every year by incentivizing the managers of such departments with a cash bonus. How can this not work?
Yeah. I call this the bribe method.
Yes.
Cut the budget, and you get a little bit of the pie there.
But not the people, just the managers. Again, just the managers get the bonus. There's no incentive for any of the employees, lower level people.
Right. And just to give an idea of how smart this guy is, a couple of things he wrote about economics. Economic theory, as taught in universities, implied that the economy can be buffeted by high unemployment, for which we have a set of ready-made policies or inflation. Oh, sorry. Let me just contextualize this. He's talking about the Jimmy Carter era. May he rest in peace. And the idea of stagflation, which was unemployment plus inflation together, right? And
Which
so
is
he says,
not what is happening now or any time since 1970s.
So what he's saying is economic theory implied that the economy can be buffeted by high unemployment, for which we have a set of ready-made policies, or inflation, for which we also have a set of ready-made policies, but not both simultaneously. Academics had no answer for stagflation. So having, again, my highest achievement is even less than Evan. I only took half of that economics class in high school. I took 1 semester of it. And so what this means is that economists cannot think about 2 things at once. They have answers for 1 problem, but not 2 problems at the same time. That cannot be figured out by economic theory. And then in his praise of Perry Johnson, right before the part that Evan just read, he says, he understands that too much money without enough goods will always lead to inflation.
Yeah.
People go to college to learn that.
Yeah, very important stuff.
All right. The preface, we get a little bit of insight into Perry's personal life. I was trying to find some information about the ages of his children, but I could not find that. But he says that he has 3 wonderful children who are the joy of my life, and I am married to the most wonderful woman on the planet. I'm so thankful to have been blessed with a wonderful partner with whom I can share my life. Raising these 3 children together has made this bond even stronger. So Perry Johnson, as of this recording, is 76 years old and married his wife in the year 2008.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that context.
And I mean, I guess it's not explicitly said here, but I think what he's saying is he had, like, the woman he's married to now fathered those children, right? That's what it reads like. So
it
that
does,
means that
yeah.
She started having those kids when he was like 60 at the youngest. So these kids have an old ass dad.
Yeah. And let's be real, he probably didn't raise them.
Yeah, he's busy.
He's too busy throwing money at his vanity campaigns.
Yeah, and running his hundreds of companies,
and instructing his staffers to forge signatures on his ballots or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Here's one of those classic anecdotes. I went to the grocery store the other day and thought I was in another country. I could not believe the cost of a head of lettuce or a pound of cherries.
Buying a whole pound of cherries at once? That's a lot of cherries, man. You're going to go bad.
What I found particularly amazing is not only the increased the prices, but also the reduced the size. So the same grammatical error twice in one sentence.
Yeah, it's pretty good stuff. Yeah, even before that, another funny part to me was where he said, "My parents met in Europe at a New Year's Eve party, which was the luckiest day of my life. Otherwise, I would not be here today."
Yeah,
I think he's getting a little like timeline mix up there, you know.
Well, yeah, the luckiest day of my life is the day that my parents met. I mean,
yeah.
Otherwise I couldn't possibly have any other lucky days. So that one kind of takes precedence.
Yeah. Thanks for that one, Perry.
Oh yeah, so the prices are going up, and the size of the package, like of the pound of cherries, for example, is going down. Pretty soon we will have to buy potatoes individually because the bag will be too expensive.
What?
Now this is a man who has been to a store.
Yeah,
sure.
For sure. Absolutely.
A pound of cherries. What a great way to start this. Okay, there was a preface. Okay, hang on. There's a foreword by Arthur Laffer. Then there's a preface by Perry himself, and then there's chapter 1, introduction. So it's a lot of preamble before we get into the real shit here. Introduction. So I've been highlighting stuff physically in the book and trying to note like the most interesting parts of this.
Are you going to donate it back to Goodwill? Because it'd be very funny to get a copy of Barry Johnson's 2 Cents to Save America that someone has like meticulously highlighted and noted.
Yeah, if I do, I should probably just like put the URL of our Patreon in the front cover.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
If you are confused by these notes, please visit. All right. So he's setting up like, why is this plan important? The plan to cut the budget by 2%. What will this fix? What are the problems we have, and how will this fix all of those problems? Well, first of all, I must say that our most valuable asset in this great nation of ours is not the land, buildings, or minerals, but rather our people. Minerals.
I thought it was the minerals, personally.
Yeah, like the gold, right? That's a mineral.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He likes to talk about gold.
That gold standard does come up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the gold rush, which is
right.
His analogy for inflation happening after 2020 doesn't really make any sense. Anyway, we'll get to it.
Yeah. He talks about the gold rush and how the price of things exploded because there was so much gold that people were digging up. We must never again let the federal government debase our will to succeed and disincentivize us from doing what we have always done, from doing what we do best.
Yeah, dude. This guy has really got a good grasp of in everything.
Did you like this story about one of his sons that immediately follows that?
Yeah. Basically, his son would not do homework until they gave him a gold star for doing the homework.
Then he did all the homework.
Then he, really all. That's actually a good point that we need to just give gold stars to people. Like instead of a paycheck, just a gold star. That's a powerful incentive.
Yeah, why give the cash bonus to these bureaucrats for cutting their budget when you could instead put their name on a Hall of Fame website or something? Mm-hmm. His son's name, by the way, is Perry Jr.
Yeah, surprise.
And he was 3 years old when this anecdote took place. They're making 3-year-olds do work?
Yeah,
like
that's messed up.
I thought preschool was just for hanging out and socializing with other babies. Just like Perry Jr., aren't we all motivated to succeed when we get something in return? Kinda.
Maybe. I mean, you can do things for your own personal reason, not have to make it transactional, you know?
Yeah. This is the American way. Our eternal optimism, incentivized with benefits, monetary or otherwise, has produced our great economic miracle.
I think a lot of people are also just kind of trying to survive, Don't think they really necessarily are worried about incentives. I mean, the incentive is to not die like penniless and destitute.
Yeah, right. And I can see how a 3-year-old son of a 60-year-old very wealthy man might need some extra motivation in the form of stickers, but a lot of us are not in his same boat, and we need that money to buy, half pounds of cherries and whatnot.
Yeah.
Oh God, everything about like fossil fuels is ridiculous.
He's all about fossil fuels.
There's some. I'm going to pick out little like nuggets of insight that I think are very profound as we go through this as well. For example, we all live on the same Earth. He argues, though, that by trying to reduce our drilling and natural gas production here in America, we are actually hurting the environment. Because that if we don't do it, someone else is going to do it, and they're going to do it worse. So we, as Americans, we should do it because we do it the cleanest.
Interesting.
So that's the kind of gymnastics you have to do to justify further oil drilling in sensitive wildlife areas and stuff. If we don't do it, someone else is going to do it worse.
But they might do it cheaper, which seems like something that he would like, considering that like energy cost is a big driver of inflation in many cases.
That's true.
Anyway.
I mean, he's got a strange sort of a fence to walk where it's like he's sort of acknowledging that like damage to the environment is bad, but also like we need oil, and I care about the economy also.
Yeah, he talks. He's like, what? Are you going to stop driving? Are you going to stop flying?
Yeah. Nah. He rants about the Federal Reserve a little bit too, and how they actually caused the Biden era inflation. They spent too much money and injected more money into the economy than we had the ability to support through the output of goods and services. Why though? Why did they do that, Evan?
Yeah, I think there was a COVID supply shock, and then I think there was also some like corporate greed going on that kind of maybe realized the economic conditions allowed for them to gouge and artificially inflate prices. I think there's been a lot of evidence to that. A lot of people were very resistant to that idea, but it's kind of been borne out, I think. That
Yeah. So, is the economy like? Is it some sort of metaphysical, unknowable force that drives the sort of the currency and the goods and services? It dictates the exchange rates of all this stuff on its own? Is it its own entity that kind of like naturally figures all this stuff out, or is it human beings making decisions to improve their own station and sort of like benefit themselves, and the cumulative effect of all of those decisions is what drives prices up and down?
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. I think that Perry he does not really follow cause or effect or like the reasons why maybe some of these like government practices are happening.
Right. Back to energy companies though. This is like a bullet list plan that will reverse the inflation and stagflation or whatever. And one of the bullet points is we must restore our faith in our oil and gas companies to become world leaders in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I'm not sure if that's feasible. I don't know if you're going to restore people's faith that the oil and gas companies will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. As the primary driver of those emissions historically, and like we know that they knew what they were doing. I'm not sure that genie can go back in the bottle, Perry. I don't think faith can be restored in them. I thought it was very interesting that he mentions the unfinished pyramid on the back of our dollar bill. Which is like a touchy subject for probably some of the type of person who would be reading this book. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
Like the Illuminati symbol infiltrating our American currency. We have yet to reach our potential thanks to an ever-intrusive government. And this is a tick that he repeats more than once. He refers to the Biden administration doing everything in its power and more. He puts "and more" in parentheses several times when he talks about the Biden administration doing everything in their power. And that gets into a strange sort of philosophical question. Like, is it possible to do more than what is in your power? Wouldn't
maybe one of your powers is to make more power?
Right, yeah. Wouldn't it by definition be within your power if you do it? Like, clearly you're capable of it, so it is within your power to do so. So maybe that's a joke, and that's why it comes up more than once. Like, it's an interesting little wink.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah. Sudden turn in the introduction. You know, he's been talking about restoring the economy by bringing back oil drilling in the United States, and then he suddenly starts talking about illegal immigration for 2 paragraphs, just out of nowhere. No segue. It just immediately like, why should we allow these porous national borders?
Yeah, there's a lot of that too. Just unfinished thoughts are just like completely dropped and then moving on to the next topic, like without really considering it at all.
Yeah. What about this other conservative thing?
Yeah. So you got a problem with immigration, but you want your pound of cherries to be cheap, like
right.
Sorry, buddy, one or the other.
Yeah, who picks the cherries? Who ships the cherries? Who works the counter? Who stocks the shelves? Man, people. They're people. We might be the only country that favors illegal over legal immigration. Why make it so difficult for legal immigrants to enter the USA when they have so much to offer and have long helped build our great nation?
Whatever, man. Not even like, it's not even worth engaging with this shit.
I wrote in my notes, simple-minded racist horse shit.
Yeah, there you go. That's actually, a level of engagement.
2 paragraphs after that, he says, I want to introduce laissez-faire principles into the running of our government.
Yeah, that's kind of contrary. Yeah, a little contrary to the immigration thing.
Yeah. We got to crack down on certain laws, but hands off on the other ones. The ones that benefit me as a wealthy business owner. All right, my eyes started popping at this part. He wants to incentivize a more democratic government that restores wealth and economic decision-making to the American people. So he wants to democratize the economy.
Interesting. I'm in favor of that too,
actually. Yeah, we may have some common ground there. I'm not sure if he means it the way that I do. But and that's where we get to our first cartoon, which I will show to the camera now so people can get a taste of what the hell is going on here.
I like your notes.
So for anyone not watching, I will read what's in the comic. It's like a 1-panel comic. It says, "What the fly on the wall heard." Seems like an unnecessary framing device, but there's a budget manager who's a balding man, and there's a purchasing agent who's got a nice head of hair. Maybe he's supposed to be younger than the budget manager. Is that what's implied there? Budget manager says, "You've only spent $8 million?" And the younger purchasing agent says, "Can't we find a way to spend another $2 million? We've got to get rid of this money."
Wow.
Now, what's the joke?
Wow, man. They're really being wasteful with this very non-specific, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I guess it's supposed to illustrate the sort of mindset of, if you're a government department and you have a budget, you are incentivized to spend all of what's in that budget.
Yeah, that's what budgets are. Like, yeah. You got a problem with that?
Right. And I guess his point of view is that, well, they may not need all that money. They should find ways to accomplish their goals without spending all the money. But I think, I don't know, like, we give these budgets to these departments with the expectation that they will use that money to accomplish something. And if they spend more of the money, ideally, they are accomplishing more of that something.
Yeah, usually the goals and the budgets are aligned, you know.
Yeah, that's the hope. I mean, obviously there's going to be some government waste, and there's going to be like they're competing for this budget money in some cases, so they spend the money to prove that they need the money. And Perry thinks that that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, if the government department is doing something that benefits the people, like, fine, just, I don't give a shit, spend the money. I don't value efficiency when it comes to, like, providing services to people.
Yeah, well, and yeah, the government doesn't have a profit motive the way that private companies do, so it makes sense that you would, put those decisions for public services in their hands, you know.
But it doesn't make sense to somebody who's so business and economics school, poisoned.
Yeah.
And the last little bit, I think, of the introduction here is an interesting glimpse at, like, his personal life. It's important to note that I am not an overspender. I own more than 70 companies, none of which have any debt. I do not have any personal debt. If any of my companies need any funding, it comes directly from me personally. I don't know if I believe that. Like, is it possible to to not have any debt as, like, running a business? You don't have any loans or anything with 70 companies? Or maybe they're all fake companies.
Yeah.
And then it's a classic story of, like, I came up from nothing, and I succeeded because I worked hard, and I had a vision for what I could be, basically.
Mm-hmm. Putting in 80-hour work weeks without making a dime. But he knew in his heart that he would succeed.
Like your typical entrepreneur, I had and still have unbridled optimism. Yeah, well...
That's good. I'm glad.
Yeah, I don't think we hear much from the entrepreneurs whose optimism has burned out. I think that they stopped being entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The fire that drove me then and still drives me today. That fire is called the American spirit. The Biden administration has done everything in its power and more.
And more.
To squelch it. He said he regularly got eviction notices when he was in grad school.
Mm-hmm.
I came from the school of hard knocks. Literally says that.
Yeah, I don't know if you looked into his background. I didn't. But yeah, I would be surprised if he didn't have a little bit of financial backing to be able to work 80-hour work weeks without making a dime. Like, generally, that's not something that you do unless you have some sort of fallback.
Right. Yeah, and he proudly talks about how, like, he and his companies have no debt, and then he talks about how he went through years of, like, not making any money and not having enough to, like, keep the electricity on and eat enough food. And it's like, well, I guess you must have been borrowing, right? Like, obviously you had to have had debt to have survived that part of your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Credit cards or something? I don't know. Then we get into the interminable chapter 2.
Oh, yeah.
Which begins on page 29 and ends on page 72. And this is a book that is, I think, just about 200 pages in total.
Yeah, but this is the most important section because it's about taming inflation. Mm-hmm. And that's what might have lost Kamala Harris the election, maybe?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Important subject of the single Biden term.
And he's got
inflation.
Some really great solutions for inflation because he really understands monetary policy. He's really on top of it all.
Something that you may not have gotten from me showing the cartoon to the camera is how low res they are.
Yeah.
Maybe hard to convey that through shittily showing it to a webcam, but they're like kind of blurry, and like there's a lot of JPEG artifacts in print here.
Yeah. I noticed also that there is an attribution to the author of the illustrator, and it's such low resolution that you cannot make out their signature. So I mean, I'm sure they're credited somewhere. But like you're not going to get that from from reading the comics.
And this is like, you know, one of the worst traits of like political cartoons is like, here's a couple paragraphs next to a drawing. All right.
Also, why do these two people look wildly different? They're like drawn in different styles completely.
Yeah.
He's got big googly eyes, and his like wife is like tiny. Her head is like a third the size of his, and her eyes are like a tenth the size of his.
Yeah, we got like it's like a moral oral character, and then like a somewhat realistic drawing of a beautiful movie star.
Yeah, so this is his analogy. This is the same thing that's happening now is what happened back in 1848 during the California Gold Rush. Because it's the same thing. Government and monetary policy where they, control the rate and the supply of money is like the same thing as like just finding a very valuable national resource in abundance, and then a bunch of people, rushing to take advantage of that. It's the same thing.
We're talking about the mid 1800s in California, where things were a little bit less regulated. We're kind of on a frontier there, right? So
yeah,
it was a little bit like free for all.
Yeah, I don't think just lucking into a bunch of very valuable commodities is quite the same as government like monetary policy. I think that there's like one is kind of controlled and one is kind of like a free for all.
Does this dude have his hand in his pants, by the way? Like,
oh yeah, where is his hand? I mean, maybe yeah. I think that's the only conclusion that you can draw.
He loves spending money. He's sort of like a Finn sub.
I like also his wife is just like, that was good. $1,200 for breakfast?
Yeah. Typical relationship, that.
Yeah. Man is too worried about financial concerns to enjoy his breakfast.
Women love food. Men hate spending money. It do be like that. There's a lot of cups on the table too. They were really just drinking a lot of breakfast drinks.
Yeah.
It's also interesting that he notes, so the 1849 California Gold Rush prompted the biggest migration in U.S. history. 1% of the U.S. population went to California in hopes of getting rich. So that was a mass migration for the promise of riches, I guess, or like improving the conditions of your life by finding opportunity. So was that good or bad, Perry? I mean, should they have been allowed to cross the border into California to steal all the gold?
Yeah, I guess he doesn't really...
Maybe not. I don't know.
I mean, that's a powerful incentive. Yeah. Whatever. Perry's a fucking idiot.
Well, because of all the gold people were finding, and then probably just like a sudden influx of a bunch of people, the people who were already there were like, well, I can just charge these idiots a bunch of money.
Yeah.
It's like a carnival town or like a resort town where like you can take advantage of these people because they don't know what things are worth.
Yeah, for sure.
2 eggs, 2 beers, and buttered toast would cost $43. You're drinking beer at breakfast? So he gives all these sort of like outlandish examples of the inflation during the gold rush, where a pound of coffee cost $1,200. Again, pounds of things that you, as a consumer, don't really buy in pounds usually. Gamblers were charged $10,000 a night for a room. He says that's in today's prices. So crazy prices. Woman making over $18,000 selling pies to the miners. Anyway, The miners were shocked, amazed, and bewildered by such high and unexpected prices. So are Americans today. And okay, like, yeah, the cost of some things went up over the past few years, definitely, but not that much, right? So I feel like him using all those outlandish examples sort of undermines the argument he's trying to make.
For sure.
It's not nearly that bad.
Yeah.
And actually, he shows us a graph that's like the same thing here. The inflation rate was a lot worse, at the end of Jimmy Carter's term. And it's gone up significantly the past few years, but not nearly as bad as 40 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and then also the unemployment rate wasn't like they're talking about stagflation, trying to say like this is stagflation, what's happened since 2020. And the unemployment rate has been very low for the most part. It's funny also, like all those like Will Stancil guys are like talking about like the economy is good stuff. And it's like, yeah, the economy is good or better than whatever like consumer sentiment, because the inputs that are needed to produce goods and services are there, and that is allowing for growth to continue, because that's like all like a good economy just means, oh, it's growing. Well, of course, like that doesn't mean that it's growing in a way that benefits like everyday people. It's like two different like ways of looking at it.
Right. So you've got these conservative guys who are like, the economy's terrible. And then you've got these purported more liberal types who are like, well, no, actually, based on your terms of what a good economy is, the economy is good. But it's like, well, maybe we shouldn't be accepting the like conservative economist premise of like what makes for a good economy. For sure.
But yeah, it's just funny that these guys, like this whole book is like, it's like not even tackling what's actually happening. Like, it's like, there hasn't been a recession. Like, these people have been freaking out about a recession. Now, obviously, like, it's still possible. And like, I guess the thing is, like, this doesn't address is like the business cycles of capitalism. Like, Perry talks about like, oh, we want low interest rates because that way, money flows through the economy or whatever. It's like, what do low interest rates do? Like, he doesn't understand that, like, that increases the supply of money, like free money, like, or not free money, but low interest rate money that like creates, like people take loans or businesses take loans because they're trying to do something productive with the money. And like, that leads to like, an expansion of the money that's available to people to use for productive purposes. And eventually it like overheats because of greed and capitalist incentives. And then there's a collapse when we find out that like, oh, all this stuff, like whatever subprime mortgages or tulips or whatever, some crucial part of the economy collapses, and then we're like, oh shit. And it's like all, consumer psychology stuff.
Okay. Anyway. Well, speaking of consumer psychology, though, what you're forgetting is that inflation eats away at our ability to spend. It dampens our psyche and whittles away our optimism and confidence in the future. So the psychological effects of inflation are kind of what he repeatedly goes back to, and that is why inflation is our number one problem.
Okay.
I just said it's not. I don't think it is. Number one problem, I don't know, probably like environmental climate stuff, right? Like,
yeah,
he kind of minimized it and said, drill, baby, drill. But I don't know, man. Speaking of California, California's like LA is literally burning down right now. That's a pretty big problem. He complains about the Federal Reserve a lot. Like Evan said, their only option is raising interest rates because of inflation. He says they have no choice but to slow the economy down by raising interest rates. And that to me is like a lack of imagination. We can't come up with something else.
That is a lack of imagination. I mean, yeah, like the monetary policy, like it shouldn't be the only thing that we're using to like intervene with the economy.
Right.
But all of the political solutions have been completely forestalled by neoliberal politicians. So like the Fed is the only thing that that does intervene in the economy.
Right. Yeah, I think Perry has his issues with like the current system, the way that we intervene in our economy, but he still accepts the basic rules of all of this. That,
right.
Like we can only do like a handful of things to direct the economy in certain directions, but really the individuals, the captains of industry and whatever, must be left to their own devices and must be allowed to make their own decisions.
It's also interesting because he like just rages about inflation, how it's awful, it damages our psyche or whatever, and then he's like, well, actually, the ideal rate of inflation is 2%, and doesn't like explain it at all. Because deflationary cycles are way worse for everyone than inflationary, like a low level of inflation or whatever. But like, of course, that doesn't come into play at all. Because a lot of this, obviously our government, the Fed or whatever, do all of the things that they do mostly to benefit corporations and businesses.
Stockholders.
And yeah, that too. I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
Well,
we don't know shit about the economy. We shouldn't be talking about this, but whatever.
I learned a lot about it from this book, though. For example, this is a quote from N. Gregory Mankiw. I did not look up how to say his name, but he was George W. Bush's. He was a chairman for the President's Council of Economic Advisors, and he calls him George Bush. and then he puts the years 2003 to 2005 in parentheses, and it's like, well, most people specify that that's George W. Bush, Perry, but fine, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, the quote from N. Gregory Mankiw includes this nugget of information. Money is the yardstick with which we measure economic transactions.
Yeah, man.
And again, people go to college to learn things like this. This is what an economics degree gets you. Is money is the yardstick with which we measure economic transactions. Another sort of like alarming thing to say about inflation. Inflation is a disorienting fog that makes one lose his or her bearings.
It's like the fog of war.
Right. And I guess this sort of like uncertainty in the future that he's talking about is like, you don't know tomorrow what this dollar will be worth because things are so in flux. And I feel like a solution that he does not really think about is stopping the progression of time. Like that to me is a way out of this.
Yeah.
The value of a dollar cannot change if we stop moving. If time can no longer progress, then the value of the dollar cannot go up or down. It cannot move at all. We are stuck.
Interesting.
Yeah. And honestly, it solves a lot of other problems too, like immigration. Like if everyone's just stuck where they're at right now, no one's going to move anywhere we don't want them to.
Yeah, true.
It also stops. This will help a lot with like the exploding cost of medical, as Perry
the exploding cost of medical. Hell yeah.
We're not going to need any more medical care if we stop aging. So it's just something to consider. Scientists maybe should work on that. And our climate issues will be solved as well. Things cannot, heat up or be damaged if they are no longer moving forward in time. Just something to think about.
Interesting.
He uses Argentina as a case study because they had a lot of inflation.
As many do, yes.
Right. We don't want to end up like them. And here's one problem that they faced in Argentina. Argentinians without access to dollars, I think, U.S. dollars, live in poverty or close to it. Poverty rate is now 37%, up from 30% in 2016. And they are trapped in jobs whose wages are not automatically linked to higher prices. So the wages that they get from their job don't take into account that the money that pays their wages, it's going to change value dramatically in the near future. And I'd like to just think about that in terms of your own life here as an American worker. Is your job, is the wage automatically linked to higher prices? Like, it's not, right?
No, I don't think so.
Like, we don't have that either, Perry. Severe inflation never ends kindly. Some type of drastic action is usually taken. The currency is devalued, interest rates are driven sky high, or in the worst cases, think of Weimar Germany, a political revolution.
I thought this was very funny. Again, he doesn't talk anything about like the cause of any of these economic, like the root causes of any of these economic things. Like, yeah, I mean, he does talk about COVID a little bit, but like, not really.
When that's like the primary cause of these, you know.
Yeah, and then Weimar Germany, great example, but he didn't mention like World War I. Like,
right. Yeah, the thing to take away from this is that inflation causes Hitler. That's what you need to remember.
Yeah, when like the your entire fucking country gets decimated by fucking war, then it's kind of hard to supply some of the things that people need, and that kind of leads to price increases. Like
right, and then people are easily manipulated in certain ways. Yeah,
manipulated in certain ways
when their lives are uprooted.
Certain people get scapegoated.
Oh,
it's kind of similar to.
I think that happened recently, didn't it?
I think that
so Weimar Germany, and then later on that page, he refers to it as Weimar, Germany, which I don't usually see. An incompetent government relentlessly pumped money into the economy to pay for programs and to appease an increasingly restless public. We all know how that story ended. Do we? Why not tell us, Perry? What happened in Weimar, Germany after this?
Yeah.
Lots of end notes as well in chapter 2. Like 5 full pages of them. Oh, yeah. He sort of argues against the existence of the Federal Reserve. That's the one that I really focused on.
Yep. Because then everything will be fine. Again, it's like, okay, yeah, great. Constant money supply. We don't need to increase the supply of money in a, economy that we want to grow or anything. It's like, there's a lot of things that's going to happen with like the Trump stuff. Cause like, tariffs or whatever, all these things are like things that are going to like majorly impact businesses. And so, but it sounds good to, idiots. So they're like, on board with it. But then it's like, there's going to be, I think, a lot of tension between like business leaders and, the rank and file idiots who like want these things that are like objectively bad for businesses. Like the illegal immigration thing. Like, come on.
Yeah. And the visa fight that's happening right now.
Yeah, that too, for sure.
I saw that Steve Bannon said to some Italian like newspaper or something that he's going to try his hardest to get Elon Musk removed from influence.
I saw that.
Because of the visa thing.
Yeah, man. All right, fucking idiot. I mean, they're all idiots, of course.
Yeah, the Federal Reserve Act in 1913, created by Congress. The Federal Reserve is not technically part of the government. It conducts its own monetary policies, not subject directly to the will of the voters. I mean, what are you suggesting? That our economy should be...
Ron Paul 2020.
Well, yeah.
Ron Paul 2012, rather.
2028. Bring him back.
Yeah, I guess...
He's still alive somehow.
Yeah, that's wild. I guess you could just have just substitute Rand in. It's fine.
Yeah, but he doesn't have it. Like, Okay, so Congress can, however, modify, amend, or even abolish the 1913 Act if it chooses. So, yeah, he wants to... he might have had an abolish the Fed had as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure he did, honestly.
Oh, yeah, I meant to comment on this for anyone who hasn't been listening to our show for the past couple years, but this hat is a product of the Perry Johnson 2024 campaign. Another one of his scams. He was selling merch for $1 in order to meet... donation threshold requirements to go to the debates.
He was also giving out $10 gift cards to buy gas in exchange for $1 donations, which is I mean, I feel like that has to be illegal in some level, but
Yeah.
well, because didn't Julian or not Julian Castro, fucking what's his name, Francis Suarez got in trouble for something similar, I think. Although his was a Bitcoin thing.
Did he? Oh, right, because
I don't fucking remember.
He wants Miami to run on Bitcoin or something.
Well, no, I feel like he was also doing some other, I don't know. He was doing some other thing where he was like giving out gift cards in exchange for donations that he got in trouble for.
Here's another chart, another graph here where a line goes up. This is the money supply in the United States. And very helpfully, he tells us M stands for money. So that's another thing that you learn if you go to school for economics. M stands for money.
Awesome.
Oh, shit. This is great. This is great.
I mean, it does. M1, M2. Those are, I mean, he does refer to that a lot. I mean, those are like big macroeconomic, measures for how much money is currently circulating.
It's something to do with like the liquidity of the money.
Yeah. M1 is like liquid money and M2 is like everything else, basically.
So is this something that rich people have access to, money, like liquid money? Because I've always had solid money. It's either made of metal or paper, but I've never had like other substances. Like I've never seen liquid money. I guess that's oil. They call that
liquid gold.
Black gold, Texas tea.
Yeah.
Money supply goes up. Okay. This was it was necessary to immediately rescue the American economy and prevent another Great Depression, increasing the money supply. But alas, this was like a doctor prescribing a medication while ignoring its long-term effects, which they were surely aware of, but decided to go ahead with the cure anyway. Okay. Great analogy. It's so great. I'm on page 37. It's so great that on page 39, we get this. That is like a doctor prescribing medication while ignoring the painful side effects. Although in this case, the doctors were well aware of the side effects. Like I see it here, and then I see it almost verbatim again. Right away. So no editor, I believe. No editor was involved here.
Yeah, I would think that's a good assumption to make.
The Biden the Rain Man cartoon. This is one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's a good one too. How are we going to afford groceries? We can't even afford groceries with all this money. They do look crazy.
Yeah, what's going on with them? What's going on with them?
I wonder if we can reach out to those artists and commission our own political comics.
Yeah, we have to somehow decipher who this person is who drew these. And they have to not see my notes where I call all of their work shit. Okay, so but the joke, Biden the Rain Man. So I guess what's happening in the cartoon is that it's raining money. You know, he's making it rain by increasing the money supply or whatever. By the way, I guess who's responsible for printing more money? Who does that?
The Fed. I mean, are you talking about like the actual physical bills?
Yeah,
because most money isn't paper, and I mean, it's like a ledger. Like, it's not real. But
because he was complaining that the Federal Reserve is not actually a government agency, not like we don't actually have control over it. But then also, it's the president's fault what they do.
Yeah. Well, and also technically banks create money regardless of the Federal Reserve. Like every time a loan is made, that increases the balance of money. It creates a liability for the bank and an asset to the company or the whoever takes the loan. And then it's backed by the fact that there is a loan backing it. Like it's the promise that someone is going to pay back the money or whatever.
Yeah, it's making up money.
It's making up money, but it's like, again, it's for like productive purposes that like, that's like, it's, you know, future.
It's an incentive to do things.
It's an incentive to do things in the future. Yeah.
Yeah. But this comic, Biden the Rain Man. So literally making it rain money, but that's not what the movie The Rain Man's about.
That's true. That is very true.
This is sort of a complicated
Though
joke.
there is maybe some comparisons you could make between Biden and the Rain Man, but
I don't think that would be appropriate to make a comparison like that.
no, I don't think it would be either.
All right, he goes through all these government actions that increased the money supply.
But he doesn't talk about, it doesn't say, like, literally quantitative easing is not listed in here at all, which is like what usually when they're complaining about the government, printing money or whatever, they're talking about that, which is basically the government buying back its own bonds to inject more money into the economy.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, there's no specifics. There's like, it's fucking crazy. These people talk about the Fed, don't even like understand like any of it. Like, just keep interest rates low forever. Okay.
Here's all this government spending he complains about. $550 billion infrastructure bill, $349 billion Inflation Reduction Act, which he has a lot of complaints about later in the chapter, and the $52 billion Chips for America Act. And I don't know how you can find fault with this. We need those chips.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think there's reasons for that other than, that's just about trying to not have China make all the chips or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was like chips. Like
Doritos.
Yeah. Eventually, you're going to have to buy chips individually because the bag will be too expensive.
Because the bag will be too fucking expensive, man. That's so true.
I'm doing a bad job showing the camera this one.
Yeah, they're doing an auction for eggs. That's cute.
There we go. Yeah, so this one actually, there's a kind of a joke, right? An auction for eggs is funny. And it's the yolk's on us. It's a decent pun.
Yeah. Credit where credit is due.
The highest bid is $500 for this dozen eggs. So that's pretty absurd. I asked you who's responsible for printing money a few minutes ago. Well, here's come on. There's an artist's depiction of where the money comes from. Joe Biden himself printing more money. And I guess he's trying to buy that apple with that wheelbarrow full of money.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah, I guess so. Because the apple costs a whole wheelbarrow full of money. That makes sense.
He's having fun printing all that money. Then he doesn't realize, the apple that I want is too expensive now. Wow, it's so much fun printing all this money. We've already increased the money supply 40% in 18 months. That's a record. All these cartoons are taking text like directly from Perry's writing as well.
It's also funny. He's like talking about like, the Fed is an independent of the other branches of government or whatever. Well, like, who appointed the chair of the Fed? It's fucking Jerome Powell, who was appointed by Trump.
Yeah. Okay, here's something interesting. More about like democratizing the economy. If we don't like a specific fiscal policy, we can vote those responsible out of office. But if we don't like a particular monetary policy, such as excessive money supply, increase painful interest rate increases. I am reading straight from the book when I say that. If we don't like particular monetary policy, we have no say in the matter. How undemocratic is this?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's what the Fed stuff is, basically, is they want to just make the Fed, they want it to be a partisan thing. So, like, there's, like, pretty clear incentives for political parties to, like, kind of fuck with their opponents using the, like, massive powers of the Federal Reserve Bank. Like, seems like a pretty bad idea, in my opinion, but...
Yeah. All right, remember when Biden was printing all that money? Look what he's doing to it now. He's just tossing it in the fire. Joe Biden is a menace.
He's an arsonist.
And that that's Powell's interest rate there, which I guess is just gas on the fire.
Or no, is that gas or is that oh yeah, you're right.
Well, it is a little unclear.
I thought it was a fire. I thought it was a fire extinguisher at first. But no, I like your, absolute dog shit.
All Biden's just throwing money in the fire, and then I guess this is Jerome Powell. He says, I don't know what I'm going to do to stop the spending of so much money. Do I have to raise the rate to 20%? Not funny at all. No, not even
no.
an attempt. If Dante were alive today and writing his Inferno, he would surely include high interest rates and high unemployment as one of the rings of hell.
Okay. That's really good.
Disagree. Here, another cartoon for you, everyone. The Incredible Shrinking House. And it's just about how your money doesn't go as far buying square footage in a home.
Yeah, I'd say the increase of housing prices is a big problem. Thanks,
and
Perry.
Also, so the woman in the cartoon, the distressed woman, says, "Yow, we'd better build quickly." Now, hang on a second. Back in 2020, $2,200 a month would get you a roughly 3,000 square foot home in Troy, Michigan. But then she's building a home?
Yeah, what's the incentive there?
Who are we concerned about here? Most of us are not building a new home for ourselves. I don't think those are the people who are maybe suffering the most under these economic problems that Perry is telling us about.
I think the next comic is my favorite.
Yeah? Well, that's where we get into supply side. This section of the chapter is called "Let's Not Forget About the Supply Side." How could we?
No. I mean...
Obviously, that's the most important thing to consider with American economics. But here's that next comic here. It's Perry Johnson at a grocery store.
I just really like that Perry is like the only person who looks like a actual person, and actually you're like, it actually looks like him. They did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I thought it kind of looked like Conan O'Brien as well.
It does look kind of like Conan O'Brien too.
But he's trying to check out with his groceries very quickly before the prices change, which I think he said happened to him when he was visiting somewhere. It comes up somewhere in this book.
Yeah.
He's in Brazil or something, and like the price of goods changed while he was in the store.
He fucked up directly below this comic by spelling Milton Friedman's name wrong.
Oh yeah, he spelled it E-I. It's I-E, isn't it?
Yeah, it is I-E. He actually got it right in the next page. But that's very disrespectful to, Nobel laureate is what he says.
It's one of the longest citations, too, is telling us who Milton Friedman is. Milton Friedman was one of the most influential economists. A free market conservative, he was best known for his work on monetarism and the consumption function. He taught at the University of Chicago, where he helped develop the Chicago School, which was influential in rejecting the then dominant government-laden Keynesian economics.
Fucking Keynes, how dare you?
Yeah. He advised Thatcher and Reagan, and then he became a resident scholar at the Hoover Institute.
Yeah.
One of our nation's most positive economic influences, Herbert Hoover.
Milton Friedman, also a fashion icon.
Oh, for sure.
Actually, no way. I'm getting him confused. Who's the bow tie guy? There's the bow tie guy. He's not
Buckminster?
Milton Friedman. Yeah.
Does Friedman not wear a bow tie?
I'd
be shocked.
He does.
That's such a bow tie ass name. Milton Friedman.
Yeah. I thought all those guys wore bow ties, but I might be wrong.
Here's something I was curious about. So, Friedman came up with, I think, maybe he didn't come up with this himself, but a formula that sort of describes how the economy works, which is MV equals PY. The M is money, obviously. V is the velocity of the money. How many transactions a dollar bill is making in a given period of time, I guess. P is the nation's price level, and Y is its real GDP. I don't know why it's Y then, but anyway. Milton Friedman had that formula, MV equals PY. He put it on his license plate. So I am supposed to believe that this man who's very smart about money, he paid for vanity plates.
Yeah, and that's where does that money go? To the fucking government. Yeah, that's messed up.
It's nonsense. Another example of the Fed increasing the money supply. The historical evidence substantiates this claim. The claim that the money supply dominates all of this other shit. Both the Federal Reserve and Joe Biden have done everything in their power and more to increase federal spending and the money supply without first increasing the amount of goods and services produced. I think that's the third example of that. Everything in their power and more.
But the GDP is still going up. What are you talking about?
Okay, more about... He gets into how he hates the Inflation Reduction Act because it actually did the opposite or whatever. Or is going to do the opposite. He wrote this in 2022, right? So a little bit ahead of like the second half of Bidenomics.
Yeah, it must have been... I think the publishing date is 2023, but it must have been very early in 2023, considering he was already selling it at the Super Bowl.
Right, yeah, that's right, yeah. Tax increases and price increases in general will generate avoidance behavior. For example, if the price of a movie ticket doubles, I will most likely watch fewer movies while using Netflix more and things like that.
Interesting.
Does he watch movies? I don't know.
Yeah, what's up?
I feel like that's kind of like he's got that kind of flipped because like Netflix prices have been going up steadily for a long time, and
yeah,
you can go to a movie theater pretty cheap if you like know what you're doing.
Yeah,
this is an interesting sort of a philosophy that he outlines here, that a fault of the Inflation Reduction Act is that there are like tax increases that will be enacted like not immediately but next year or something, and the idea that once the law is in place, companies will avoid paying the tax and most likely will change behavior to minimize taxes. So I guess the issue is that the companies know that there's going to be this change, and so they will alter their behavior to avoid paying that tax. So it's not actually effective. But
incentives. It sounds like the incentives are working.
Right. So yeah, and all this is like, well, these taxes won't work because the companies will avoid paying the taxes. And it's like, well, so punish them for doing that. Like, I don't know what you want from me. Like, we can't do anything about corporate taxes at all.
Yeah, he also does like some of the weird like John Galt stuff, like, if we increase taxes, then like, they're not even going to want to make money anymore. It's like, shut up, dude. You should know. You're the one talking about incentives. Like they, oh boy, IRS visit Biden style.
Opa Biden style.
Opa Biden style.
What even is happening here? There's 3 people at the door. They look pretty friendly. The wife seems pretty happy to see the IRS visitors.
Yeah. They're supposed to be like holding guns or something, right? They're supposed to be like, or like some demons or something.
Right.
Like that's like IRS agents they're the most evil people on earth.
Yeah, this
so
is
why they look like nice guys wearing, nice little suits.
Seems to fill half of a page, doesn't really say anything. Is the joke just that there's like, 3 agents visiting one
there's
couple?
3 of, I guess that's the joke, is that instead of 1 IRS agent, there's 3 of them because of Joe Biden.
Yeah, and they're happy.
He also says that he thinks that the IRS is going to go after middle class taxpayers more than the rich, which I don't know about. Oh, he does also say the middle class who do their best to pay their fair share of taxes, which I think is true. I think middle class people generally do their fair share of paying taxes, and generally the rich do not do that.
Yeah, I mean, he says somewhere in this that like wealthy people have the resources to minimize their tax bill. Like they can pay people who know the tax code really well to avoid actually paying their fair share. And it's like, well, one, that's you. You are one of those people. And 2, shouldn't we, like, can't we disincentivize that in some way? Like, is there any way to sort of encourage better behavior on the part of the wealthy who dominate our society? Is that allowed in Perry's America?
No. Absolutely not.
Yeah, but like, for example, companies repurchase stock to reward shareholders and boost shareholder price by artificially restricting supply. And now he places like no value judgment on this at all.
That was very interesting to me. Yeah, no.
Seems like, we should probably disincentivize that behavior is what I said, but he didn't say that himself.
Well, which is what he's complaining about, is that they put a 1% tax on the value of stock repurchases in the Inflation Reduction Act.
Mm-hmm. Right.
To disincentivize that behavior, which you could say is a distortion of the market, which these guys like hate. You would never want to distort a market with taxes. What the fuck?
His main complaint with the electric vehicles part of the Inflation Reduction Act is that we don't yet have the infrastructure to support that. But increasing EV purchases would be far more effective if a viable infrastructure were already set in place. And 2, increasing the demand for anything without a concomitant increase in supply, its price will increase. So 2 problems. We don't have the infrastructure for it yet. We also don't have the supply of electric vehicles. So by encouraging more people to buy them, the price will go up. I mean, I guess, right? But but also, like, I see a lot of completely unused electric vehicle infrastructure all the time. And 2, like, the companies who produce them are producing more of them because of this government action, right?
There's a higher demand, and so they're responding with creating more supply.
Doesn't it go both directions, the supply and demand thing?
Mm-hmm. Nope, just supply. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Keynes worried about demand. That's fucked up. That's why we gotta banish any Keynesian thought. Let alone, I don't even want to get into Marxism or anything like that.
I don't remember why I wrote this, but my note here says, what the fuck are you talking about? The IRA assumes a simplistic picture of the causes of inflation. While most economists assume that the causal factors of inflation are complex and multifaceted, emphasizing a strong relationship between the amount of money vis-a-vis the number of goods.
Yeah. Okay. So they're very, it's a very complex thing where they think that the only factor is the money supply. Like, it's just too much money. That's literally all it is.
Right. The IRA assumes that inflation is caused by higher prescription prices. Okay, so this is in the Medicare prescription drugs section. So by reducing drug prices, we reduce inflation. Of course, increasing drug prices increases inflation, but it is certainly not the only cause, and to insist otherwise is disingenuous, dishonest, and counterproductive. Well,
did they say that was the only cause?
This is,
I mean,
you yourself are talking about the different parts of this Inflation Reduction Act. Like, this is not a bill that only talks about one issue.
Mm-hmm. That's also one of the things that's like inflated in price the most, and is also a thing that people need to survive. So it's like,
should definitely be addressed. Yeah,
intervening in that.
And then he talks about how the reason pharmaceutical companies make these drugs is to eventually make a profit, and so somehow we're interfering with that. But he doesn't.
That's where he gets into the John Galt stuff. He's like, well, if we tax, if we make drugs cheaper, then they're not going to want to make new drugs anymore.
And so he doesn't even consider for a moment that should this product, which is necessary life-saving medication, should that only exist because there's a potential for profit gain? Maybe this is a flaw in capitalism, that things that human beings need to survive can only exist if the people producing them can gain, maximum profit. Maybe those two things should not be so closely tied together because, like I said, one, it's necessary. It saves lives. It keeps people alive. And so it's maybe a little bit more important than making money, I think. But he doesn't even touch that. Like, he doesn't even consider that it shouldn't be so closely tied. Phasing out fossil fuels, one goal of the IRA. But he's sort of, I don't know, he doesn't really frame it this way, but like Joe Manchin sabotaged that part of the bill.
Yeah, I mean, like, it didn't go nearly far enough. And, like, also, like, the reason why they're, like, I mean, part of it is, like, there is, like, a nationalist thing about, like, energy independence or whatever. I mean, they're trying to, like, I mean, like, that's why, like, they closed down the Keystone XL pipeline. That was, like, one of the first things Biden did when he came into office. Because it's, like, very unpopular and also goes right through the middle of the country. And it's, like, has a lot of potential health concerns and stuff. But then, like, they do approve all this, like, offshore drilling. I think they, there's, like, the Alaska stuff. They're like, oh, well, we can drill in places where, like, there's not really that many people or it's, like, offshore. So we can kind of, like, the negative externalities are not, like, impacting people as directly. But anyway, like, yeah, they're trying to because like energy prices are a huge like driver of inflation in many cases, so it's like just trying to be less dependent on that to prevent inflation, and again, also a nationalist reason.
Yeah, and what he points out here is that there are in the bill rewards for fossil fuel companies. At the same time, there are significant penalties to the industry. So simultaneously, like, the carrot is a stick or whatever. And he says this is an attempt to appease the fossil fuel states and the advocates of renewable energy within the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Which is an observation that I really
that's
like.
A good one. Yeah.
Here. But he doesn't like really take that to its next logical step, which is these two positions cannot coexist. Like, they are diametrically opposed. And so we should probably just, phase one side of this out of the equation, the side that is
he also
us.
Does that in the context of complaining about the Inflation Reduction Act raising the tax, Superfund tax, which is Superfund is like in cases of like gross environmental negligence where there's like they find that there's a company that has been polluting environment and the government has to come in and clean it up. So it's literally a tax on a negative externality,
right? Which
is like kind of important because those companies are not going to clean up that shit themselves. Like they do not have. There's no incentive for them to do that.
Exactly. It eats into their profits if they actually take care of things. So they're not going to do it on their own. Yeah. We should talk about the education part of this because he's against forgiving student loans, but also recognizes the exploding cost of higher education. The government guaranteed these loans and put the students in a position where this debt could never be recused, not even through bankruptcy. Thank you, Joe Biden, by the way. The loan rates were set at 4.99%. Keep in mind, when someone is 17 or 18, they are not accustomed to having to pay back these large sums of money, and they have no idea of the ramifications. Not infrequently, a student may end up with a degree in a field which does not enable them to have employment in that field. Hence, they are not able to repay these loans. Often, the real world is not what they think it is at the age of 17 or 18 before going to college. For example, two people that work for Perry Johnson Mortgage Company Incorporated, yet another of these companies, have master's degrees in sports management. They could not get jobs in sports management when they graduated and are saddled with this incredible debt that cannot be forgiven, even through bankruptcy. This is unreasonable.
They should have been more personally responsible and not gotten degrees in sports management.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pleasantly surprised by how much blame he places on the forces that are not the teenagers.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's completely the other way around with these right-wing types. This cartoon is interesting as well. It's two college students who are, I guess, talking about having children of their own. Because if you think it's expensive now, imagine how much our own kids will have to pay for college. Well, can we afford to have two kids? It's like, well, shit, how old are you? Like, calm down. You don't need to rush these things. I mean, Perry didn't start having kids till he was 65.
Yeah. I don't think this is what college age kids are talking about.
Yeah.
I think in reality, this guy would be spitting game instead of talking about the cost of their hypothetical children's college education.
Yeah. He looks like kind of just like a depressed guy. And she looks like she's kind of in shock. I don't know.
Yeah. He looks like a Penny Arcade guy. One of them.
Yeah. Tycho, or whatever. What's that guy's name?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah.
It's a blast from the past.
The law of demand, a basic law of economics, states that as the price of anything increases, the quantity demanded will decrease. He says this in the midst of a conversation where he says that more people are going to college despite the prices increasing. So,
yeah.
Is this a law? Is maybe the science of economics fake in some way?
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe we should finish talking about the school part and then save the rest.
Yeah, I didn't realize we've been going for this
long. We're nearing 2 hours. Like I said, this chapter is long as hell.
It really is. Yeah, it's like a third of the book.
Yeah. This is a good way to end the episode, though. He talks about Adam Smith, the founder of economics.
Yeah.
This is the first guy to think about money, I guess.
The invisible hand, man.
But this is very important to a discussion of higher education because I guess Adam Smith went to Oxford University and he was not impressed with the quality education he received there. And he blames this on just prices being set. Like you pay a tuition to the college and then, it's not directly tied to the quality instruction you get from your professor. Mm-hmm. Where he was from, Scotland, students paid their professors directly based on the quality of the instruction and how much they learned. And this is, in Smith's universities, there was a better alignment between value obtained and cost willingly paid. Willingly paid. So what I'm wondering here is if you were learning about economics directly from a professor and then you were responsible for paying that professor, I would imagine that if they taught you well, if you were taught well in your understanding of how to succeed in the economy, wouldn't you then pay them nothing?
Yeah, it wouldn't pay them very well.
That would be most beneficial to you would be to not pay them because you learned about economics.
Yeah.
It's the best economic outcome for me is to have received this education for free. So
yeah,
thanks, teacher. That's what you taught me.
Yeah, the incentive here is just to scrape by and just barely graduate. So then you still have your degree, but you can, I got a D, so I'm not paying up for that.
Right. Okay, and his solution, his proposal to solve the crisis of increasing costs of education. I propose adding a college student to the cabinet. Yes, I am serious.
Yeah, man.
I was sitting on the couch in the living room reading this and literally started laughing out loud when I got there. It's just such a funny idea. Why not directly hear from students, the leaders of our next generation? This is what capitalism is all about. I mean, I don't really agree, but it's a funny idea, but I'm also not entirely opposed to it. It's just that maybe this is not the only subject where we should be listening to young people.
Right.
They might have thoughts about American foreign policy that I think the president could benefit from considering their thoughts.
And American domestic policy, perhaps.
Just all of it. Yeah. I mean, not just college, but they have not yet been totally indoctrinated into the American mindset. Their minds are a little bit fresher, and they may have good, valuable ideas that somebody who's become the president of this country probably hasn't considered in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's the first 66 pages of Perry Johnson's 2 Cents to Save America that we have talked about. We've got a little bit more of chapter 2, the exploding cost of medical, as I promised earlier, that will be discussed. And then we've also, Evan and I have read chapter 3, Incentivizing America's Workers, which is horrifying. Lots of very bad stuff in there.
Yeah. All of his solutions are a little half-baked, I would say.
Yeah. So thanks for listening, everybody. We will see how far we get next time talking about this, because there's a lot to talk about, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm glad to not have to talk more about, well, I mean, there's more economic shit, but yeah, sorry.
That's kind of his whole focus, but yeah.
Yeah. Sorry for muddling through that whole economic thing. Oh yeah, 2 cents. He's got the 2 cents on there.
Money's everything.
Yeah. He should have to like fight Elizabeth Warren to get the 2 cents thing. Like,
oh right, yeah, because Bailey, the dog, had the big pennies on her collar too.
Yeah, but that's a 2% tax, not a 2% budget cut.
So they're going in opposite directions. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening and for being on our Patreon, and thanks again to Micah for sending us another copy of this book. Very, very valuable, it turns out, because digital copies not available anywhere.
Yeah. You have to go to any Goodwill in Iowa. That's the only place you can find this book.
Yeah. And I hope everyone enjoys my very good parody of Big and Rich, which will open and close this episode.
That's pretty awesome. Good stuff.
Bye, everybody.